Thank all of you and so many of you for being here tonight. It's an honor to have you as our guests. Before our meeting begins tonight, we will have an invocation, as we always do, offered by, this time, Commissioner Poole, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Lord, as we gather for this meeting, please continue to give us the proper guidance and wisdom that you have over the past few years to move our city forward. Additionally, if you have a little time, we'd appreciate it if you move that storm away from Houston. They could use a little help. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Presser, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Poole?
Present.
Mr. Waddington? Ms. Lloyd? Here. Mr. Murray?
Here.
Mr. Lockhart?
Here.
Mr. Brady?
Here.
Ms. Twine? Here.
Commissioners, you have before you the minutes of our last meeting, August 14, 2017. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
I move that we accept the minutes of the August 14th meeting and dispense the formal reading.
Second.
There's been a motion second. Discussion? Without objection, the motion will be approved. And hearing no objection, the motion is approved. We have a couple of special and unusual events tonight. The first is a series of proclamations in honor of the late Fred Deering, who was a friend of so many in this room. And that will be followed by a presentation by the Murray family, relatives of mine, and the Michael Murray Legacy Fund, and a gift that they are making toward the Sandusky Bay Pathway. And then finally, Dr. Richard Kuntz will be making a presentation regarding the Blue Streak University before we get to our regular items of business and audience participation. So I want to kick it off by asking the family and close friends of Fred Deering to come on up in front of the commission table, if you wouldn't mind. And then Senator Gardner is going to make the first presentation. And Daryl, for the audience and the folks watching from home, could you introduce everyone who's here tonight?
I certainly would like to. First of all, I'd like to thank Dennis and the whole city commission for having this little ceremony here tonight. But I'd like to introduce, first of all, my sister-in-law Julie and brother Brian. And Mrs. Mary Shell was a long good friend of the family and the legislative aide to my father for 20 years. Not quite all 20 years, but you were down there quite a while. And then my brother Steve, and then this is Margaret Deering, and then my wife Joyce Deering.
Senator Gardner, it's all yours.
Well, what an honor to be your state senator, but also on a night like this, as someone who not only serves in part of the legislative district that Representative Deering served, but also to have served a little over 7 years with Fred Deering in the Ohio House, which dates me just a little bit, but that's okay. This is an evening where you could spend hours talking about the greatness, the leadership, one of the most productive and effective legislators in Ohio history, and I mean that sincerely. What a tremendous example and what a great advocate for the people, and not only as a state legislator, but I believe something like 51 years of total public service in a variety of ways. And I was talking to the sheriff just tonight, and he was talking about other ways in which Fred was helped the county after he was done with all of his official public service. He continued to give to the community. So it's just an honor to be here and to get to know this young man. If you listen to him and look at him, you can kind of see a lot of Fred Deering right there. You know? I love the voice. I can just, it's almost like,
Right down the
it's
line.
almost like, well, I haven't talked to them as much as I have you, but look, one thing that's also special, and this will mean nothing to any of you, but it matters to me. On November 19th, 1985, when I cast my first vote ever as a state representative in Ohio, I'll bet you if I asked the trivia question, no one would get it right. My mom wouldn't either. But it was House Bill 445, and it was sponsored by Fred Deering. And so 10,156 votes later, I'm still here. And I actually, just for verification, I actually brought a copy of the bill with me. And also, and winners, and Mary, I actually have the journal from back then that shows that I cast a yes vote for the Fred Deering bill. Okay. Everybody else, it's what you did, because he was able, even though he had strong opinions about a lot of things, he also brought people together across party lines, and just a great friend and a great leader. And I wish I had the time to say much more, and I don't. I want to respect others, but I just have a brief citation from the Ohio Senate in honor of this very appropriate naming, so that we will remember, and generations to come will remember and know of the great Fred Deering. Congratulations.
Representative Martin?
Just before Steve comes up, this is my sister-in-law Sandy Deering, okay.
Boy, the senator, he touched on some pretty important elements, I think, of Fred's character. And I'll let you know a little bit about myself. I served 27 years as a state out-of-county commissioner. And so certainly when you serve as a county commissioner, and Fred being a former county commissioner, he always would reach into the community and actually identify what was going to, how it was going to impact them. But as the senator indicated, that was one thing that I was always extremely impressed with Fred was he truly was a statesman and a true leader, something that we sorely miss today in today's environment. But Fred did know how to reach across the lines. He helped me understand as a commissioner, don't be afraid. House Bill 592, the solid waste legislation is going to be just fine. We're going to give you all those kinds of tools. But it was those kinds of pieces of legislation that Fred did not shy away from. He understood the importance of it for not only his district, but for the state of Ohio. Many of the policies that we have today, and I almost was going to shy away from this, but I can't help it. Fred probably is responsible for more taxes on the citizens of Ohio. Today, it's very difficult to find someone even wanting to come close to carrying a gas tax or something along those lines. But if you understood and listened to Fred and knew how that drove Ohio's economy for the last several decades with the interstate highway system, we would not have that luxury, and Ohio would not be what it is if it wasn't for leaders such as Fred Deering. And Mary and I had many conversations on the phone through the years, but whenever we had a problem locally, Fred had a problem. And that's a little bit how I've tried to emulate his position. A little bit on how this road naming came about when I got appointed. I had coffee the very first day with Betty Montgomery, who actually served with Fred. And it's sad it took 17 years to have this day. But Betty says, you know, somebody needs to do something to recognize Fred for all that he's done for the state of Ohio. I said, you know what, I'm going to do a road naming bill. But unfortunately, there was somebody that already had beat me to that and introduced that piece of legislation. But then another thing that happened, which I was very fortunate for, I got appointed to the Transportation Committee, was actually able to be there and see Mary come in and see some of the testimony and actually be able to share some of the great legacy that Representative Deering had given the state of Ohio. So I have the commendation on behalf of the House of the 132nd General Assembly, signed by myself, as well as the Speaker Rosenberger. Congratulate all of you in memory of what he has given this great state. Thank you very much.
Representative Mark, Steve, and State Senator Randy Gardner, you're fairly well correct about the tax part of it. And that's probably the what he was most proud of as a legislator down in the State House, is that he took responsibility for the things that needed to be done. And the only way those things get done is with tax money. And if you ask him today if he could be here, he'd probably tell everyone that the things he was most proud of is the 2 times that he raised the gas tax for infrastructure in Ohio. And that's the only way you keep your state viable and formidable. So appreciate the recognition that you, and maybe the help that you gave them to do that. So thank you, both of you.
Representative Shi, would you like to come forward, please? And you had primary responsibility for entering or introducing legislation that finally got passed, so
That's correct,
thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you. And Mike Sheehy, I represent a district over near Toledo, Oregon, Jerusalem Township, Toledo, Maumee, and Jerusalem Township. But I was on city council. Barney Quilter always represented us. And as a result of reapportionment, the lines changed. I almost said Jeremy. Trying to get friends here. So Barney came to us and he said, well, there's somebody else who's going to represent us in Oregon and parts of East and South Toledo. And his name's Fred Deering. And we were everybody's really disappointed. We love Barney. But Barney said, listen, you're going to love this guy. He's a farmer from out east, Ottawa or Sandusky County, and you're going to like him. And so he came, I think, maybe to a muskrat dinner, and we got to meet Fred Deering. And there's one thing I think that, you know, when you meet somebody, there's an outward appearance. And with Fred, it was that outward appearance, but there was an inward, wonderful spirit that he had in here. And it was so marvelous that it showed outside. And I think all of you who know him know what I'm talking about. You know, and we have and offsprings here to see positive results of that characteristic. As far as his legislation goes, you know, we all know he had a different take on the Ohio Turnpike. And really, I thought his idea was really a good idea, but as time goes on, we were in a terrible recession back in 2008, and things didn't go the way Fred wanted it, but as things turned out, maybe it was for the best. And the Turnpike turned out to be something, I think, it was an economic development juggernaut for us all. In the city of Oregon, I can remember coming with Jim Haley, and applying to the governor and asking for help in expanding Route 2 from East Toledo, from Oregon, all the way to Port Clinton, because you know how narrow, you know, the two-lane highway was. And Fred helped us with that, and the governor did a flyover, and with Fred's help, he came to Oregon and he said, listen, we can't do 4 lanes all the way to the city of Oregon, but you know what, a half a loaf is better than a full loaf. But half a loaf is better than no loaf at all. And what we'll do is give you 4 lanes all the way through the city of Oregon, all the way to Toledo, all the way through Jerusalem Township, and then beef up all the intersections in between. So I want you to know that he's very dear, not only to me, but to the people in western Lucas County, eastern Lucas County, and his name will always be remembered and always be honored. And I want to say, finally, Mary, I met her at a fundraiser in Columbus, and she came up and told me who she was and how she had worked for years with Fred. And would I please get this thing pushing along? So here we are, and it finally happened, and I'm just grateful to be here. Thank you.
I just want to reiterate with your perseverance and Mary's perseverance, why all this got done. And you have a little sign that
I do. I have a part of this will be the highway sign that will go up in Fred Deering's honor. And then I also have a resolution for each one of the siblings and Mrs. Deering for each of you personally. So you'll have that.
We are also honored to be joined this evening by U.S. Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur, and thank you so much for coming. Would you like to address the Deering family?
Would you ever miss this opportunity?
We'd be delighted.
We've had such distinguished speakers, but I'm going to take the opportunity.
Wow.
I'm, Mayor, thank you so much. Now, I'll tell you a lot of things that I know about Fred Deere. But one of the memories that first flashed to me when I learned of this event was Bono, Ohio. And I was a young elected official back then. And, you know, you're always looking to make friends. And so I went to the church social. And I had met Fred through Barney Bogle. So I figured, well, I'll go sit with him. But what I remember about Fred, his plate was full. And he was not facing me, he was turned around. And I can remember those legs. That was a man who'd walked furrows. And I could see him carrying this plate with a big piece of cherry pie piled on top of all the food. And I went and sat at that table. We had such an enjoyable afternoon, that beautiful day in Bono, Ohio, which most people in the United States would not know where Bono is. I remember him coming to Washington and testifying on an infrastructure bill. Back then they called it transportation. And Fred made that trip to Washington. Barney was involved, Dwight Wise was involved, and there were these wonderful, wonderful memories of a team of people that could work together for the public good. He would be so honored that Randy Gardner and Steve Arndt and Mike Sheehy are all here together in his memory. I don't think he would I don't think that he would be ashamed of the recognition. He was sort of like the recognition. And I always remember Fred with a smile, always with a smile. And we talked a lot about, he loved electric co-ops. And we used to talk about how the circuitry would run through his district, starting at the back of his farm. And he had it all figured out, and how a new grid, and really America's talking about a new grid, how that would work and how the co-ops would be involved. He was always thinking into the future. His comments on the Ohio Turnpike were rather negative. And I always wish that they would appoint Fred to the board, the Turnpike Commission, because I think he really would have kind of shook things up a little bit for kind of an archaic institution. And I think he had real ideas there, and he was proud of the gas tax. And he looked for public leadership to make a difference for our country. He loved coming to Washington, he loved testifying, he was never afraid to give advice. And look at over a half a century of service that involved the metro parks here, the Erie, Otto, he would be so proud, International Airport with customs clearance, he would be so proud of that. All the improvements that have been made here in northern Ohio through public leadership, and his love of agriculture, his love of farming. He'd be very upset about Lake Erie right now, I know that. And our inability to solve that problem faster. So I feel gifted, and I know every person here does, certainly his family, his closest friends and relatives. But for those of us where Fred came into our life right before he passed, and I was able to visit him here, he was talking about the future. He didn't feel sorry for himself, and was just very pleased to have somebody remember what he had done for this region. So I think his spirit lives in all of us, right? And my role in this is to say, I hope that someone on the committee, as this thoroughfare is properly designated, will allow us to plant a tree, maybe his favorite kind of tree, somewhere along the perimeter. And Mayor, maybe you could help us out there. I don't know. But what a wonderful tribute. We need about 20 million trees planted in Ohio and Michigan, so that'd be a down payment on Fred's part. And maybe it could be a little bit more, depending if some of the school classes want to cooperate. So I just want to acknowledge his great, honest, continuing dedication and perseverance for our region. Thank you to the Duran family. Thank you to all the officials that made this possible.
And we are delighted this evening to have another special treat. You know, it's no secret that the jurisdictions of Sandusky and Perkins Township have sometimes had fractious relationships. But we're in a new era now. And we are delighted to be joined by our colleagues from Perkins Township who have a proclamation. I understand, Mr. Coleman, you're going to present the proclamation. But Mr. Lang should certainly feel free to come forward with you if he would like and make the presentation.
I will say that Mr. Farrell was going to join us, but unfortunately, he's in a city called Columbus doing something or another, getting some progress done. As has been stated, Fred was quite a gentleman, and I mean that in the truest sense of the word. Friend of many, mentor to many. He's the epitome of a true leader. In the times that I knew him, I first started out with one of his fundraisers that I attended, and I got to talk to him, and he sort of lit the fire in me about, hey, this guy knows what he's doing. He's on the ball. Didn't matter, he was the other party. But we got some kind of conversation going, and over the years, we didn't really see each other all the time, but whenever we did, there was always kind of friendly conversation, and one of the things that always came up was the tolls on the turnpike. And I did thank him because at the time that I first met him, I was an employee with the Ohio Department of Transportation, and because of that, we got to work on some neat projects and new projects and infrastructure that's critical to where we are today. I'm gonna leave it at that with my comments, and I want to read the proclamation because when I first read it, I was impressed. And I think folks here that don't know of Fred and his legacy will also be impressed when this was put together by our staff. So with that, proclamation, Perkins Township. Whereas Frederick H. Deering established Deering Farms in Oxford Township and was recognized as the Ohio JC's outstanding young farmer in 1955, and whereas while building the family farming operation in 1952, Fred began his 51-year career as an elected public official, and whereas Fred faithfully served 20 years in the Ohio legislature as state representative for Erie and Huron counties, as well as parts of Lucas and Wood counties, and whereas while serving in the Ohio legislature, Fred was responsible for and championed more than 80 bills and amendments, including the Ohio Sea Grant Program, conservation, and environmental laws, related drainage and pesticide use, as well as solid waste and recycling. The current agricultural use value law, research funding for the Ohio wine industry, as well as supporting programs for the Ohio Department of Agriculture, Ohio Department of Natural Resources, and Ohio State Extension Services. I'm only halfway done, folks. And if you know Fred, he had a plate full. So, whereas Fred served as Erie County Commissioner for 12 years, and his leadership led to establishing the Erie Regional Planning Committee, Erie County Landfill, and the Ottawa County Regional Airport. Whereas Fred also served as Perkins School Board member for 9 years, including 4 years as president, and during which time the Perkins school system expanded to a full 12th grade system. And whereas Fred served as Erie County Metro Parks Commissioner for 13 years, was instrumental in establishing the Osborne Metro Park, and his service as Parks Commissioner was recognized with the Ohio Parks and Recreation Leadership Award and the National Parks and Recreation Association Outstanding Commissioner Award. And whereas Fred's service to the community included volunteering at BGSU Firelands McBride Arboretum, whereas Fred was a member of the Ohio Farmers Union, Men's Garden Club of Erie County Democratic Party, Habitat for Humanity, Friends of Erie County Metro Parks, St. John's United Church of Christ. Fred was honored by many organizations, including the Ohio Agricultural Hall of Fame, Perkins and Monroeville Schools Hall of Fame, and whereas the state of Ohio, in recognition of Fred's many contributions to the state as well as to this community, has recently designated a section of State Route 4 in Perkins Township as Representative Frederick H. Deering Memorial Highway. Now therefore, we, the trustees of Perkins Township, on behalf of all residents of our community, do hereby proclaim and acknowledge the contributions of Frederick H. Deering to Perkins Township, Erie County, the state of Ohio, and do hereby also proclaim State Route 4 Hayes Avenue as Representative Frederick H. Deering Memorial Highway. Signed, Jeffrey Farrell, Timothy Coleman, James Lang.
I'd like to thank Dennis and the city commission for allowing us to have this time, and oh, one more, okay.
I'm sorry, Darrell, I gotta cut you off just for a second. So, I too have a proclamation to present, but I want to say this first. Fred was a dear friend to so many folks in this room. He was both a leader, but also a friend, and he could also be incredibly insightful. I met him when I was in youth and government, and he was assigned miraculously, I have no idea how this happened, but he was assigned as my advisor for purposes of the bill that I had. I had a bill that was designed to fix school funding in Ohio. And he was very pressed, and he said, that'll never happen. He was right, it turns out. At least my wife would say that. So. But I do want to read just the last part of it. And to be clear, what we're talking about is what Route 4 between Crawford County and its terminal point in Sandusky is now named officially by the Ohio legislature as the Fred Deering Memorial Highway. And the sign will be placed in Perkins Township because that's the closest local jurisdiction tie, and it's indeed fitting. But I want to just read this last part of the resolution. And we are saying, as a city, we do ask the citizens to join in celebrating and recognizing the lifetime achievements of Frederick H. Deering, and to remember him while traversing the very roadways he had such a passion for maintaining, even if this means our pocketbooks feel a little lighter, and further resolve as an altogether fitting tribute to Freeway Fred that we collectively commend to our state legislators at least a 25% increase in the gas tax, which has remained unchanged since 2005, even as inflation has eaten away more than 25% of its purchasing power. So, well, I had the three of you here. I couldn't resist making it. Back to Columbus, we certainly appreciate it. And thank you all for being here. I'll give this
Well, I'd just like again, thank you for indulging us, you know, and honoring us with this time that you're interested in.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you very much, Darrell.
Big day. Congratulations.
Okay. We talked about it, Ray. I think I'm not gonna ask you for any information, just, yes.
I am. We had like the editorial this morning. Thank you. All right, now that we're settled just a little bit, we're delighted to have some great friends of mine and my family, and who are here to make a special presentation. And this is on behalf of the Michael T. Murray Legacy Fund. And I understand that his daughter, Michelle, is going to make a presentation. And if you'd like to step to the microphone, podium, appreciate that.
Well, thank you for having us today. We really appreciate it. This is my brother Gabriel. As Dennis said, my name is Michelle, and this is my mom, Tammy. We're going to talk a little bit today about the Michael T. Murray Legacy Fund. We created this fund in 2011 after my father passed away. Our main goal was really to carry on my dad's legacy of contribution and commitment to the community, and we think we've found the perfect opportunity to do so. We have raised, I think, about $38,000, and we wish to distribute this money for the benefit of a bike path and a bike path study in Sandusky. When we learned that the city was considering building a bike path in Sandusky, we were really excited, and we thought this would be the perfect opportunity to help honor my dad's legacy. Since I can remember, my parents have always been great athletes. When we were young kids, they would train for marathons together and often push me and my siblings in running strollers down the road. Even growing up after I graduated from college and moved back home, back to the nest for a year, I remember my dad would get up and go running every morning before work, and after he got home from work, he would go biking down the road. So that was pretty cool. One of my favorite memories every summer is we would go to Kelly's Island and participate in the Kelly's Island race. And of course, afterwards, we would eat a bunch of perch and Brandy Alexander's, and we still continue to do that from year to year. We love that. Another really special thing about my dad is he was a world traveler. We traveled around the world with him, and our vacations were always very active. We would walk around cities, we would go to museums, we would bike, hike, just very active. And I think from our life together and our travels together, one of the most important things I learned from him is the value of experiences over things. And that's really why we're here today. We hope to help get the Sandusky Bike Path off the ground and really to help encourage people to value fitness and to value spending quality time outdoors. My dad was around right when Sandusky just began to flourish, and we want to help build upon that momentum and really help further connect the city. I know the bike path is not an inexpensive endeavor, but we're confident that the development is a very worthy cause for the city, and we think it will really truly help benefit Sandusky. Thank you.
Well, Michelle, I can't vote to accept the gift that's being made tonight because it would be a conflict, but I can say this. What you spoke about your father was the same person that I knew. And I think he'd come back from those active vacations, as you put it, and fall asleep in the office. And he loved the city. He of course, grew up in Sandusky on 308 East Adams, and as did my father and all of his siblings. And so I think it's altogether fitting that you're making this gift in his honor to further increase activity in Sandusky and experiences in Sandusky. And when the pathway is complete, I think there will be, an incredible range of experiences from the east end to the west end, and it will be a truly great gift that all of us collectively can give to those who follow. So thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brady.
I think it's necessary that I acknowledge the fact that I spent quite a bit of time walking quite a few miles in a very distant land with your husband and your father 47 years ago. And those are some of the most memorable moments of my life. And I think it's so fitting that you're donating to a cause that would be so important to Michael. We'll look back on this process, perhaps this pathway, and say that this $37,000 was the catalyst that started us rolling on that project. Thank you.
I wonder if someone might care to make a motion to accept the gift that's been extended.
Second.
Been a motion and second discussion. Ms. Cresser, since I need to abstain, could you take a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd? Yes. Mr. Murray?
Abstain.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Thank you, commissioners, and thank you, Murray family, Michael Murray family. Dr. Kuntz, you've been waiting for some time, and at the last meeting, I incorrectly announced that that was the last presentation from the Sandusky City Schools, but you are here tonight to talk to us about Blue Streak University. And if you, I understand you have a presentation, if you'd like to step to the podium to make that. We really appreciate that. We really appreciate the collaboration with the Sandusky City Schools and sending the various emissaries here to enlighten all of us and the public about the many ambitious things that you're doing these days.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. I appreciate the invitation to talk about Blue Streak University. One of the things I have to do, first of all, is introduce myself. I am Richard Kuntz. I am the College and Career Readiness Advisor at Sandusky High School. A lot of the students like to refer to me as the College and Career Readiness Coach, because I also coach women's girls basketball. First thing I want to say about Blue Streak University is really our initiative to implement the state's College Credit Plus program. A lot of folks don't realize how significant this is. What College Credit Plus program has done is basically made it possible for families to save a ton of money on college education. It's the perfect role for me. I know some of you in here know my background, know I grew up in Sandusky on 119 West Parish Street to a low-income, working-class family, and I know that education has made a world of difference in my life. I also served in the military. A part of my job as the College and Career Readiness Advisor is to prepare students for the workforce, for education, or the military. I served in the U.S. Air Force for 5 years, and after finishing my active duty, I did what many others do. I said, hey, I'm used to working in active duty. I need to continue to work. I would attend classes here and there to try to just feel my way out in terms of trying to decide what it is that I wanted to do. Eventually, I decided at age 27 to finally pursue my undergraduate degree in journalism. I worked for a while as a reporter at various newspapers and had the opportunity to realize after working for probably about 6 years that there were so many things going on in our communities that needed to be addressed, so I changed fields and ended up getting my master's degree at Michigan State University. After getting my master's at Michigan State University, I was offered a job at my alma mater, Norfolk State University in Virginia. I went back to Virginia. I taught. I think that's where I caught the education bug, to teach, to give back to others. After going back to Norfolk State, I stayed there for a while. My mom got ill. Anytime my family members are ill, particularly my mother and father, I have to head home. So I made plans to do that. And I said, well, what is one of the best ways for me to head back home? You know, what I thought about was education, furthering my education. So I checked into a program, it was a doctoral program, and I ended up at BGSU. And I give you this story just to show you that, look, I came from a low-income, working-class family with parents who valued education, right? They had a limited education. My father had an 8th grade education. My mother graduated from high school. But they always said, do what you have to do so you don't have to do what we do. Right? And so that's why I'm pleased to announce this. And what Blue Streak University does is it allows students who are from all the way, believe it or not, from 7th grade to high school to test. Originally, they had a test called the Compass test. Now it's the AccuPlacer. And as long as they qualify through this AccuPlacer with their reading comprehension and their writing, they can qualify to take College Credit Plus courses. And I'm pleased to say that in our school, we average between about 135 to 150 students every semester who take advantage of College Credit Plus. I'm also pleased to announce that we have 2 individuals, and this program is going into its 3rd year. We have 2 individuals who will be really, really close to earning an associate's degree. At the same time, they'll be graduating from high school. They'll have an associate's degree in college at BGSU. So I'm really just here to promote it because I think that there are a lot of people who may have heard of it, but they generally don't know all about it and what it provides the opportunity for you to do. So if you have any questions, that's including the commissioners and anybody else, if you have questions of me regarding College Credit Plus, how it's able to save so much money, it's paid for by the state. You know, students already receive about $6,000 per student from the state, and those students who take College Credit Plus courses also receive dual credit for high school graduation. So it's just one of the best things that has ever happened, not only to Sandusky High School, but in the state of Ohio for all high school students. And I don't know how many of you are already taking advantage of it, but if you have sons, daughters, grandsons, granddaughters, cousins, nephews, nieces, you should ask them, what do you know about College Credit Plus? Are you enrolled in College Credit Plus? And if they say yes, and you ask them, are you taking classes? And they say, no, I haven't taken any classes yet. You should say, why not? Right? Because those 2 individuals who will have nearly an associate's degree will have saved anywhere from $45,000 to $50,000 for their parents. So I'm trying to look out for parents as well as the student, right? So, and that's pretty much it. I brought some brochures, and if you have any questions of me, I'll be glad to entertain any questions that you have at this moment. No
Thank you,
questions?
Dr. Kuntz, for being
Thank
here.
you.
Okay, now we turn to audience participation. Anyone wishing to address the commission about any of our regular agenda items, please step to the microphone and give us your name and address and share with us your thoughts. Mrs. Kresser, while we're waiting to see if anyone is coming up to the microphone to speak on the legislation, I think we're going to have to scrap the consent agenda this evening. I probably follow up the process anyway one more time, as all of you know. But items B and C need to come off the consent agenda because Ms. Lloyd has indicated that she wishes to abstain or needs to abstain on those pieces. Items C and D, and then for procedural reasons, B already needs to come off, so that only leaves A. So we might as well just treat them all as regular legislation.
Out of the arena. Out of the arena. Like an arena queue. Not the Isaiah Thomas deal. Yeah, the arena. They would apparently was going to have to go to the ballot. That's why they were going to lose.
Good job.
They got referendum basically.
Why are we taking on this?
They realized it was going to be.
Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to any of our regular agenda items?
Oh, I should have said thank you.
If not, then we will turn to, I'm sorry, before we do that, we need to accept the various communications from staff recommending pieces of legislation. Would someone care to make such a motion?
Second.
Then a motion, second discussion. Without objection, the motion will be approved. And hearing no objection, the motion is approved. Mrs. Kresser, would you present the first item, please?
The first item would be an ordinance adopting amendment number 4 to ordinance 17-064 passed by the City Commission on March 27, 2017, making general appropriations for the fiscal year 2017 and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, I believe before we take a motion to pass the ordinance, we need to have a motion to accept the fiscal officer's certificate.
Next one.
That's the next one. Oh, I see. Okay. So as to the first item, would someone care to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of rules in full accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion, second. Discussion. Mr. Soloway, as I understand it, these are just to introduce into the budget the various items that the commission has adopted or expenditures that we've authorized since we adopted the budget in
Yep, some things have just come up during the course of the year, so.
Commissioners, any questions or comments? Mr. Kresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd? Yes. Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington? Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. The next, what are we referring to this as, item 2 or item B?
2.
Item 2, please.
Item 2 is an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of $2,900,000 in notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purposes of, number 1, revitalizing a portion of the Bayfront Urban Revitalization Area by acquiring, clearing, and improving certain properties in that area, undertaking the environmental cleanup and remediation of certain properties in that area, constructing road improvements and related utility and infrastructure improvements in that area, and otherwise improving that area. 2, paying a portion of the cost of eliminating grade crossings by constructing the Venice Road grade separation project in cooperation with the Ohio Department of Transportation. 3, acquiring a ladder truck for the fire department. And 4, acquiring salt trucks for the street department and declaring an emergency.
Commissioners, would someone care to make a motion to accept the fiscal officer's certificate first, please?
So moved. Second.
There's been a motion and second. Discussion. Mr. Kresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Commissioners, we also have an ordinance that has been presented to us for the refinancing of these various notes. Would someone care to make a motion to adopt that ordinance under section Is it under section, it's not under, it's under section 14.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd,
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules and in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
been a motion and second. Discussion? Still always an annual undertaking as we pay down these notes. We've kept them in short-term notes because that's been the cheapest way to refinance or to finance these.
And this year, we do not have any new issues. As you may recall, last year, we had the $1.2 million fire truck and some salt trucks that we had purchased that we were financing. So the good news is actually we're paying off an older fire truck that we had bought a few years back. So this year is strictly a pay down of all the current notes.
Okay, thank you. So, questions or comments, commissioners? Mr. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington? Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item 3, please.
Item 3 is an ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a license agreement with East Water Project LLC to provide for the use of a certain portion of the city's rights-of-way as described in the grant of a license for encroachment for purposes of retaining an existing handicap accessible ramp and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd, Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brady.
I think Mr. Klein could give us a very brief explanation, if you would, of both this ordinance, and you can probably bridge into the next ordinance also. They're the same piece of property. One is a existing pad and the other one is a new set of stairs pad.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman. The two encroachments that are on here, the first one was a previously existing encroachment, which is for the handicap ramp, the ADA accessible ramp out front along Water Street. And the second one, item number 4, would be for the stairway downstairs along Shoreline Drive. This is the property right next to, that's been under construction, right next to Facer Park on Hancock, bounded by Hancock Water and Shoreline Park.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Commissioners, questions or comments? Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Abstain.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Abstain.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 4, please.
Item 4 is an ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a license agreement with the East Water Project LLC to provide for the use of a certain portion of the city's rights-of-way as described in the grant of a license for encroachment for purposes of installing basement stairs and a concrete dumpster pad, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion? Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Abstain.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Abstain.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 5, please.
Item number 5 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into an agreement for professional design services with Environmental Design Group LLC of Cleveland, Ohio for the Sandusky Bay Pathway Update Project, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules and in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Got a motion and second. Discussion. Ms. Byington, perhaps you could walk us through this important piece of legislation that builds on the legacy of the work that the city has done in connection with the Sandusky Bay Pathway updates it and also potentially takes advantage of the gift that was made tonight.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Through you, the city amended the Bayfront Corridor Plan in 2005 to include the Sandusky Bay Pathway, which is a plan for a continuous pedestrian and bicycle access path along the city's entire waterfront. The bicentennial vision set the implementation of this pathway as a priority. Therefore, staff requested qualifications from firms to update the existing plan. An update will look to update the existing conditions, review originally suggested routes to see if they're still viable, or if they should be changed based on today's conditions. The update will also provide branding, signage, and an updated estimate on the cost for sections of the pathway. 4 firms submitted their qualifications, and Environmental Design Group of Akron, Ohio is being recommended for contract award. The total project cost will not exceed $70,000. The cost of the project will be paid with a generous donation from the Michael T. Murray Legacy Fund in the amount of just over $38,000, and the remainder will come from the capital project funds.
Thank you. Questions or comments, commissioners? If not, then Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 6, please.
Item 6 is a resolution recommending the downtown Sandusky Commercial Historic District for nomination to the National Register of Historic Places and declaring that this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this resolution under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Poole.
Just a comment. I think this is a very good thing we're doing. I believe that the maintaining the historic look of our downtown is very important long-term for the community. There aren't a lot of things that make communities special. There are towns all over this, all along the lakes and waterways of wherever. And is whatever we do that can maintain the historic look of downtown Sandusky will give us a leg up on in getting people to come through here to visit our community. I think this is one of the more important pieces of legislation that we've done.
Additional questions or comments? Is someone from staff who wishes to speak on this? Ms. Blanca, did you? Okay, I'm Casey, I'm sorry, would you? Ms. Sparks, would you care to speak on this?
Sure, thank you. I think we do have a map up here. Thank you, Mr. President and members of the commission. As Commissioner Poole had stated, this is a very important legislation. As you were aware, we did enter into contract with Maroos Brothers in July of 2016 to work on this downtown Sandusky Commercial Historic District. A public hearing was held back in July. We had many property owners come in full support of the creation of this district, and actually, last Wednesday, the Landmarks Commission unanimously approved this as well. The application was obviously for a new historic district, which encompasses the existing Columbus Historic District, as well as the Water Street one, as well as individually listed properties. The boundary actually concentrates on development, commerce, transportation, social history, architectural awareness, as well as an expanded period of just construction. As you know, listing on a national register does not mean limitations. It does give us the ability to, and the property owners the ability to apply for tax credits for rehabilitation. And the downtown commercial historic district encompasses actually a smaller area than our existing design review area, so property owners will not have any additional processes to go through. So there is a meeting in Columbus, and all the property owners have been notified, and if they wanted to attend, they are able to do that. So this evening, we're just asking the commission to give a favorable recommendation for the creation of this district. So I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Sparks. Questions or comments, commissioners? and I should have known because Ms. Kresser handed me a note that I was supposed to pay attention. It says, item 2, recognize Casey Sparks to speak about historic district. So I missed it.
And I've been called worse than Ariel, so.
It's renumbered.
It's renumbered, that's why.
Thanks for the defense, I appreciate that.
Oh, whatever.
If there are no questions or comments, would you poll the commissioners on the, I have to abstain because I'm directly across from the property that's included in the historic district. I will be abstaining from this vote. So would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yeah, no, abstain.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
And now on the resolution.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
You're not going to trick me a second time, I abstain.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
That resolution is adopted. Item number 7, please.
Item 7 is an ordinance authorizing and approving a grant in the amount of $15,000 through the Small Business Assistance Grant Program to Halo 1848 LLP in relation to the property located at 805 Wayne Street, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine, unless you're masquerading as Ms. Lloyd again.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Ms. Muratori, this time I have read the note that Mrs. Kresser has given, and I'll see you up there at the podium. So I understand your presentation, and please proceed, and thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President and members of the commission. I just want to briefly discuss the project that was approved at the August 8th, 2017 Economic Development Incentive Committee meeting for the entity known as Halo 1848. The partners in this project are Dr. John Davenport and Mr. Sean Daly, and they're here with us tonight in the audience, and I believe may come up and join me for part of this. They are both United States veterans, and Halo 1848 is an umbrella company housing multiple businesses, including Mohawk Studio, which is a recording studio, which will be relocating from Mr. Daly's home in Huron, Ohio. This studio will do music recording, sound production, audio book production, music, and sound advisory services. The business will also house Halo Live, which is a live music venue, and eventually a hall rental, commercial kitchen, and meeting space, all of which will operate out of 805 Wayne Street. And I've got some pictures here of the exterior and interior, the current condition of 805 Wayne Street. This formerly operated as a church. It was vacant when Dr. Davenport purchased it in April of this year. And in order to transform this space into a space that's suitable for these businesses, they will need to improve the accessibility both into the building and within the building in terms of bathroom accessibility and so forth. Also perform some ceiling repair, electrical upgrades, install air conditioning, and also do some aesthetic improvements as well. So I would invite Dr. Davenport to come up here and speak to some of these pictures on this slide and the next few slides with respect to the current state and then the renovations that will be needed as part of this project.
Good evening, and thank you very much for inviting Sean and I to come in. It was wonderful to meet all of our representatives so that we get a chance to listen to Marcy and everybody else, Steve Arns. One of the major problems we have, this church was founded in 1848, so it goes along with the historic aspect right down Wayne Street. But if you notice, we've got multiple steps here, then more steps here. There are no really good access points into this church for anyone with handicapped problems. So what we're going to try to do is figure out how to get people through this entrance. This is the best entrance we have, we think. And once we get inside, there are no bathrooms on the first floor, so we're figuring out how to get ADA certified bathrooms on the first floor. It's almost impossible to get somebody into the basement, so I can't get everybody into the attic or whatever, but we're going to do the best we can with the structure that we're given. This particular building was built in 1913, and along with the house next door.
So you can speak to some of the more.
This is the back of the building. This was the other choice for getting a wheelchair ramp in here. You notice the fire escape was cut off with an acetylene torch at some point in time. I'm not sure if they sold the steel or whatever. We do have a company in town called Mac Iron. They have just given me a proposal of $13,290 to repair or replace that particular fire escape. By the way, we do have Gable Elevator, which is a commercial, it's about $11,000 to put a wheelchair ramp commercial into the building.
No, if you want to.
These are a couple of the historic things that we still have on the premises, which makes it a very unique piece of property to try to keep for the city of Sandusky. That's our goal. If you notice the wrought iron fence, I have a meeting tomorrow morning with DJ. I can't remember how you say his last name. Swearingen. And DJ and I are going to meet tomorrow morning here at his facility. But if you notice the wrought iron fence, I just recently purchased 130 linear feet of antique wrought iron fence that was out at the Davis Bessie farm. And we're going to have that sandblasted painted. So it's going to go right along with the Wayne Street black wrought iron fences. I think it'll fit in really nicely. To set the building off, we have a proposal with the Mary Grove Company out of Toledo, Ohio, and they're going to build us some kind of a awning in the future when money becomes available.
If there's anything else you'd like to say, I'm just going to wrap up.
No, I just want to say thank you very much for everybody in Sandusky for trusting us with this unique piece of property, a very historic property, and we hope to do a good job for you.
I'm going to just wrap up with some comments on the project costs and how it's going to get funded. The total project costs are just over $100,000. This includes interior and exterior improvements and costs to make the building accessible. The project will be funded with owner equity, a private loan, and then if granted tonight, the city grant small business assistance of $15,000. The committee specifically wanted this grant focused on some of the ADA issues, so making it more accessible, both in terms of building access and bathrooms. The grant is just under 15% of total costs, and it will leverage private dollars approximately 7 times. This phase of the project is expected to be completed by September 30th, 2018. And I believe the project creates a unique new business in the city of Sandusky that can be a unique attraction for residents, visitors, and even businesses utilizing the services of the recording studio. So that is the presentation for this evening. Are there any questions that I may answer?
Commissioners, questions or comments?
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd?
I just want to wish you two much success. I had the pleasure of sitting down with Dr. Davenport and Mr. Daly, and looking back, Sean and I have been talking about moving his studio for over 2 years now, trying to figure out how to get you into the city of Sandusky, and we've done it finally. So I'm very, very excited, and I think it's a great opportunity for our community, and knowing how much they really want to get involved with the community and working with students and just everyone in general. And we've worked with Sean a lot with Downtown Sandusky, Inc., and with the city, and he's been very, very helpful and is just very excited to get involved. So I'm excited too.
Additional questions or comments? I want to echo the thoughts. I want to thank you for your investment and confidence in the city of Sandusky, and for what I'm sure will be a rich contribution to the unique fabric of the city, and it's going to only enhance that. So thanks for taking the plunge. It's a beautiful building you have. I attended one of the last weddings in that building before it was sold, and it's really cool. So
We hope to do weddings maybe sometime in the future. You never know.
all right, if there are no other comments, Mrs. Crutcher, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Oops, backward. Did I get you all?
It still passes.
Close.
Item
Real
number
close.
8, please.
Item number 8 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into an agreement for professional design services with CT Consultants Incorporated of Mentor, Ohio, for the McCartney Road reconstruction, storm sewer, and storm pump station design project, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington?
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of rules in full accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
There's been a motion and second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brady?
I'd ask Mr. Klein In the absence of Jeff Keefe to give us an explanation of this, this is going to be great news to our friends out on McCartney Road who've waited a long time for this, and you can probably tie both this ordinance and the next resolution together because they are of the same make there.
Through you, Mr. President. If you recall, several months ago, the commission voted for a project for the Venice lift station. Well, part of that project included the inflow and infiltration, or the storm water that gets into that sanitary lift station, and doing an evaluation as to where that came from. Turned out that a large portion of that is coming from the McCartney Road properties and from Bardshar properties, and a large piece of that is from the laterals that are tied to the system just because it's older infrastructure out there. So during this evaluation, we realized that we obviously would need to do some work in that area. There's an existing storm sewer, but if we take the flow that's needed to be taken off of the lift station, if we take that into this storm sewer, it would be at capacity and it would back up basements right away. So what we're looking at doing is putting in a new storm sewer out there. There's going to be a lift station as well. The storm sewer ties in or discharges at a ditch that runs north, goes underneath Barrett Road, and then underneath the railroad and discharges to the bay. Right now with the bay levels 2 to 3 feet higher than normal, that bay is backing up and we have nowhere to discharge the storm sewer. So what we're also looking at doing is raising the storm sewer a little bit, and we'll have both storm sewers in parallel. We'll have a lift station, and in discussions with the Soil and Water District, we're looking to put some backflow and some other types of infrastructure out there so that the bay does not stop us from discharging in that direction. So this project here, the first one that's on the agenda, item number 8, will be for a storm sewer and that storm lift station. Obviously, the road is in poor condition. We didn't want to resurface the road before we put in the storm sewer. We've been hearing loud and clear that that road needs repaired. So that's going to be included as part of the project. Item number 9 on the agenda is for an application to the Ohio Public Works Commission for the McCartney Road reconstruction. That application is due next week. We have in the past received money. That's the money we received for Campbell Street. We received it for Fifth and several other roads throughout the city. And when doing an evaluation on which roads would be the most likely to get funded, this year we compared it to the 5-year capital plan. In the past, we didn't have that luxury. Now we're trying to look at the plan, what's available, what we're already planning on doing, and then going after the funding for stuff we already have planned, rather than we would have to scratch something from the plan that we've already said that we would be intending on doing. So McCartney Road was already in that plan anyway. Now we're adding the lift station portion to it, and we're looking to supplement that project with some OPWC dollars. That OPWC amount would be $175,000, and that would be for construction. The original project, which is for the design, is just under $50,000 for the full design, being paid for out of Issue 8 and Stormwater funds.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Commissioners, questions or comments regarding
Chairman.
number 8? Mr. Waddington.
About a year ago, I sat out there in 2 or 3 different homes on McCartney Road. One was probably 7 or 8 of the residents. I remember getting a hold of contacting Mr. Whoops. I believe you even went out there. I had coffee with them, so they're going to be thrilled. I'm glad that we're finally getting something done. And the roadway at the time, they were even happy if we could just tar and chip it. But this makes more sense. I'm glad that we're going this route. They know it's coming anyway, so I appreciate it.
Additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Cool.
These kinds of projects I'm always supportive of. This will have a direct impact on the quality of life for the citizens out there. So anytime we're spending money on these kinds of infrastructure sewer projects, I'm on board. So thank you for making this a priority.
Additional questions or comments? Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Ordinance?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 9, please.
Item 9 is a resolution authorizing the submission of an application by the city manager for financial assistance and to enter into a project agreement with the Ohio Public Works Commission in order to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission's state capital improvement and/or local transportation improvement programs authorized by Chapter 164, Aid to Local Government Improvements of the Ohio Revised Code for the McCartney Road, Church Street, and Ward Street, and portions of Niagara Street and Church Street reconstruction project, and declaring that this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Poole?
move for the adoption of this resolution under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion, second, discussion. Of course, is the potential grant funding application for the improvements that Mr. Klein just talked about. Unless there are questions or comments, Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Now on the resolution?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
That resolution is adopted. Item number 10, please.
Item 10 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager and/or finance director to expend funds for the purchase of a Muffin Monster channel grinder for the Venice Road Pump Station from JWC Environmental of Santa Ana, California, in the amount of $21,783, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine?
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second, discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington?
I had a Muffin Monster at the House of Donuts, but I know what this is.
I had to Google a Muffin Monster channel grinder, just because this isn't the first one we've purchased in recent years. And
4,000 calories.
I did take a look at what it is, and I'm not really going to describe its function. But if someone else wishes to get into that level of detail, that's fine.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brady?
I am greatly disappointed to find out, though, that the Muffin Monster parts are not interchangeable with other grinder parts. And so consequently, we really only have one direction to go and one price. I need to get into a business like that.
Okay. I won't comment. Questions or comments on the Muffin Monster channel grinder? If not, then Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 11, please, our final item.
Item 11 is an ordinance, this is at first reading, excuse me. Amending Part 9, Streets, Utilities, and Public Services Code, Title 3, Utilities, by the repeal of Section 939.50, backflow prevention devices, and the addition of Chapter 943, backflow prevention and cross-connection control of the codified ordinances in the manner and way specifically set forth here and below.
Commissioners, having heard this communication and understanding that this is to be presented on first reading, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine?
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the first reading.
Second.
There's been a motion and second. Mr. Klein, I know that at the last meeting, we had a presentation regarding the importance of backflow prevention devices and the need to update our legislation. Could you give us a little bit of walkthrough of how this changes? I understand it gives the city some greater ability to make inspections and determine whether our water is being maintained in a safe manner.
Yes, Mr. President. What we have done in the past is not in compliance with the state laws. And to do what's needed, we're taking a two-step approach. And this approach has already been, it's already underway in the county and at other jurisdictions throughout the state. And what we're doing is we're having two different sets of controls where we are going to be evaluating the backflow devices at each property, and we're going to be inspecting each of those. In the past, we've been required to do it, but we haven't had that position. And we are also going to be requiring that the property owners provide documentation that their equipment is in working order. That's going to be on an annual basis. This is going to allow us to obtain a small fee from each of those property owners, each of those people that own a backflow device, to pay for the employee time to do the work that's needed to go out and inspect and talk to the property owners. The differences that are in the ordinance, they're crossed out throughout it. There's not a huge change in it, except for those two items for the most part, and some definitions and just some technical items. But the big portion of it is going to be the fees associated with it. And one thing that we did change from the last, from the presentation that is represented in here, is that for the commercial industries that had more than one backflow device, it was originally $25 for the first one and then $10 for each device afterwards. We changed that to be $10 for every one of them. That's just an accounting item. It's easier for us to make sure that we're collecting, and takes, actually going to take less time to track this and make sure that we're doing it right. So,
Mr. Klein, could you just give an example of some of the kinds of places or businesses that would have these? I know marinas do, to make sure that the water out in the docks doesn't back up into the city water supply. I know it's true for irrigation systems that use city water. Who else has to have these kinds of items?
yeah, well, anybody that has the potential to create backflow within the system, and backflow is created by a pressure difference throughout the system. Our pressure within our water system is at the plant, it's about 68. So when it gets out into a building, say Firelands Medical Center, or any hospital, or anybody that is going to be utilizing the water, any industry that is going to be utilizing the water, maybe they're pumping it up to a different pressure so that they can use it properly. And if they pump it up and we have an issue with our system, then whatever they're connected to could backflow into our system, contaminate the water supply, and that contaminated water would get out to the various industries and residents. So it's important for pretty much every industry that has a direct connection to our water system. On the residential side, it would be connected to mostly sprinkler systems. If most people fill their pools other than with a direct connection, but things like that, if you do have chlorine or bromine or something like that in your pool and you had a direct connection to your pool, you would need to have something like this as well. So it's anything that has a direct connection, even on our construction projects. Whenever we have a contractor that's tied to one of our hydrants, we require them to have a backflow device that we provide to them, so that if they are filling up a truck that may have had something in it that isn't in our water system, we require every contractor, private or on one of our projects, to have one of these backflow devices as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Klein. Questions or comments, commissioners? Mr. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the ordinance, please?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Wadding?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Klein?
Yes.
That ordinance passes on first reading. Now we turn to the city manager, Mr. Webster. It's time for your report. You have the floor.
Thank you, Commission President. Thank you, audience and staff. I wanted to start tonight by just reintroducing Chief Rick Wilcox. It's his first meeting, so we can welcome him. I promise I will not make him this time repeat after me any really long sentences without getting having something to read along. But we're excited he's on board. He got off a little easy tonight without legislation, but I figured I'd call him out in the carpet and welcome him aboard. We look forward to working with you, sir. Moving on to donations. A donation of $96.16 for the Recreation Department was received from Sandusky Segwave in recognition of National Parks and Recreation Month. I'd ask for a motion to accept that donation.
Second.
Been a motion, second discussion. Without objection, the motion is approved. And hearing no objection, the motion is approved with our thanks.
And I believe you already accepted the donation from the Murray Foundation, so I don't need to repeat that, but we're very thankful for that donation as well. Moving on to new and old business. The Bicentennial Commission and the Sandusky State Theater have been working to bring a public art project to fruition. A Greetings from Sandusky mural has been unanimously approved by both boards, the Bicentennial Commission as well as the State Theater Board, and is currently the design phase. It was recently approved at the Landmarks Commission. The mural is designed to be reminiscent of a Greetings from Sandusky postcard, and hopefully will imprint upon Sanduskians many of the city's one-of-a-kind historic assets. The mural is slated to be painted on the west-facing wall of the State Theater towards the newly redone Jackson Street parking lot. The section is currently a gravel pit, painted walk, and is next to their loading dock. The hope is that this will become a source of pride for the State Theater as we head into our bicentennial next year. Also, the police department, Lieutenant Dahlgren, Sergeant Susanna, officers Rankins, Martin, and Lillo participated in the back-to-school rally and stuffed the bus. They received a letter of thanks from the Stuff the Bus Committee for their participation in stuffing and passing out backpacks with school supplies. Moving on to the Department of Community Development, Ms. Tasha Johnson is requesting a reduction to the amount owed to the city for her mother's 2006 CHIP loan. Ms. Johnson's mother passed away, and she would like to transfer the property into her name in order to reside in the home with her family. Dolores Evans, mother of Tasha Johnson, received a $28,000 loan in 2006 through the owner-occupied rehabilitation program. The current amount owed to the city is just over $14,000, and she's requesting a payoff amount of $50,000 of the balance owed, a total of just over $7,000. City staff recommends approval of the reduction because the property will be transferring to a relative of the original property owner. Additionally, the city will receive money which will be used on future trip projects. So I'd ask for a motion to accept that write-off.
Second.
Been a motion, second discussion. I grilled Mr. Lasko pretty hard today about the specifics of that, and I was ultimately satisfied that was appropriate and a very thoughtful proposal, actually. So thank you for the hard work and the thoughtfulness.
Always, thank you very much.
Additional questions or comments? Ms. Cressy, would you poll the commissioners, please?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
That motion passes.
Thank you. I have another request for a motion of approval for the extension of our transportation agreement with Erie County Job and Family Services for transportation. It's a request from Erie County Job and Family Services, which is currently reviewing its transportation bids and will not be able to make award prior to the end of September. A communication for ratification will be brought before the commission at the September 11th meeting. So I'd ask for a motion to approve that extension.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion, second discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Also, the regular scheduled planning commission meeting for September has been changed to Wednesday, September 20th, 2017 at 4:30 PM in the commission chambers. Again, that's Wednesday, September 20th at 4:30 in the commission chambers. Also, the regular Board of Zoning Appeals meeting is scheduled for September 21st at 4:30 in the first floor conference room or the commission chambers. The regular Board of Zoning Appeals meeting is scheduled for September 21st, 4:30 PM in the commission chambers. Moving on to public services, this is a request for a motion as well. The Alzheimer's Association has made a request to extend the length of time that a temporary sign may be placed in our city parks. They're asking for an extension from 7 days to 13 days. Staff has no issues for the request, but would ask for a motion to approve that extension.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion, second discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
The Central Park Playground Neighborhood Meeting was held on August 21st. We want to thank everyone who attended, including several commissioners, and we'll be bringing back the results of the meeting in the coming weeks. The department received positive feedback from the neighborhood that will be used for the final rendering that will ultimately be presented to the city commission. And then finally, the drive-through drop-off day has been scheduled for Saturday, September 30th. Again, that's Saturday, September 30th for the drive-through drop-off day. For questions on this event, please call 419-627-5884, 419-627-5884. And I also just want to, in closing, remind the commission and the community that we had a really nice opening ceremony for the Wilbert Street Park. Commission President Murray represented the commission on that day, but it was a really heartfelt thanks from that community. It was a great turnout of folks that were happy to see what a big difference that small park will make on that neighborhood. So thank you very much, and with that, I turn it back to the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Wobser. Questions or comments for Mr. Wobser? I want to echo, Mr. Wobser, your comments about the Wilbert Park dedication. A really big turnout of neighbors and children playing in the park already. And kudos to you, Mr. Link, and your team for getting that assembled. And I know there are a couple more benches and picnic tables to come, but the park really looks great. And it's really an example of the kind of park I think we want to have in neighborhoods where it's very visible on all sides, as in contrast to, say, Churchwell Park, which I think has been a problem to some degree because of the fact that it's so remote. So I think that's really great. So if you haven't seen it, it's at the corner of two streets that come together kind of diagonals. Just a really beautiful park. If there are no questions or comments for the city manager, then we will turn to old business. Anyone have any?
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
Okay. We had a great meeting at the Hancock Corridor meeting, which the city manager showed up, Mr. Wooster, thank you very much. And a lot of help came from the greenhouse crew and Mr. Link setting up a beautiful meeting. We had a good crowd of people that showed up for that, so I want to thank them for that. That was done really well. And the second item that I have is, at the last meeting, we asked the law department to explore amendments to our golf cart legislation to include mules or gators or other vehicles of such. And I believe in the last communication via email from the law department that they reached some conclusions, which I think having our city mirror what the city of Huron has, our closest neighbor, in regards to amending legislation to include other vehicles would be a good thing. So I've let the law director kind of go into more detail about that because he says it better than I do. So.
Mr. Harris, any comments?
No comments. We would have to bring it back, just like the backflow ordinance. Since it's a legislative change, it would have to be 2 readings. I proposed the material to the city, commission. Obviously, we couldn't discuss it. This is the forum to discuss it under old business. Huron has amended their legislation their golf cart legislation to allow mules, ATVs, and whatnot on roadways that have speed limits of 35 miles per hour or less. I think we've already voiced our concerns, but honestly, it's in the purview of the commission to vote that. I think it would be uniform to what most municipalities are doing now in relationship to the Ohio Revised Code. So if there's a motion directed me to bring forth that legislation at the next meeting, I'll do so.
So moved.
Well, there's a motion, and is there a second? There's been a motion second to bring forward legislation to modify our golf cart legislation to conform with that which Huron has, and specifically, and state law, and that specifically applies to roadways with speed limits of 35 miles an hour or less.
Correct.
Okay, motion second, discussion. I think anybody who wants to take a gator or a golf cart on Cedar Point Road where no one observes, Cedar Point Causeway where no one observes the speed limit as it is out of their mind. But I suppose we should reserve that right for folks who want to do that. I'm not sure if I'm going to vote yes on the legislation, but I'm going to vote to bring the legislation forward. Additional questions or comments? Mr. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington? Yes. Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
That motion is adopted. Other items of old business? Items of new business?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brady?
I have 2 requests for executive sessions. I will make a motion for the first session. We'll deal with imminent litigation.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion? Presser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
And the second motion I would like to make for an executive session on an issue dealing with personnel.
Second?
Been a motion second. Discussion? Mr. Presser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
That executive session is set. And under new business, commissioners, I need to request a motion to set a public hearing on October 2nd at 5 PM in City Hall, this conference room, to discuss the calendar year 2018 rural transit grant. To make such a motion.
So moved.
Set a motion second. Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That hearing is set. And this does not require a motion, but I want to announce that there will be a hearing, or public meeting, excuse me, on the 2018 Rural Transit Grant, and that will be on the 22nd at 1 PM at the Central Fire Station. And then finally, it's my privilege tonight to again share with all of you what many of you will have read in the newspaper already. There is an award that's given every year by the Erie County Economic Development Corporation to a visionary leader, and that is no less than our own city manager. And he was recognized for his outstanding efforts in economic development and his visionary contributions that have broken social, political, or economic barriers, thereby opening doors and setting a new course for Sandusky. And specifically, as was that evening at the meeting of the Erie County Economic Development Corporation, 3 years ago, the city of Sandusky took a big step forward with the hiring of city manager Eric Wipser. With the support of staff, commission, and community members, Eric has systematically identified and addressed infrastructure and opportunities that will service the businesses and residents of the city. Progress has included aggressive economic development support with the creation of unique programs that leverage and encourage private investment, visionary placemaking with investments in parks, neighborhoods, and commercial beautifications, and active partnerships with regional businesses, philanthropic, and civic institutions. Eric's work is contagious and has brought an energy and optimism to the area that extends far beyond the City Hall. Mr. Wipser, congratulations. Don't let it go to your head, though. We'll expect you hard at work tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock.
Don't ask for a raise.
If I could really briefly, I would say that from awards going to the city of Sandusky to myself, we're getting a lot of positive feedback lately. And I know not to take too seriously any award that comes to me as an individual, because that's an award for the leadership of the city commission. It's an award for the hard work of the staff. And as importantly as any of that, the investments that people in the private community as residents and institutions are making. And I'm just excited to be a part of a team and to serve this commission that is dedicated to moving Sandusky forward at a really rapid pace, and look forward to several more years of partnership and your leadership. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wipser.
Mr. Chairman,
Cool.
before we close, I just want to say, Saturday I had the opportunity to work with Reverend Herman Robinson and mentors and some of the young adults from the Acorn Ministry on a cleanup at Shoreline Park, and I just wanted to recognize them. And it's just good that there are so many different organizations that are stepping up to do things to keep our city clean and to improve our community. And I want to thank Reverend Robinson. And I think he was working with probably a business in the community, and I really didn't, other than grabbing a rake, I didn't pay attention to who it is, what business he was.
I'm not sure which one I was.
You were busy doing something. You were up the street at the rally.
A 5-year-old kid I was chasing around at the park, but I was there and met your brother, actually, by the way, who said hi.
Yeah, I think the Hoger Feast were behind.
Is it Hoger Feast?
It was their business.
I did not realize.
Yeah,
Thank you. I did not know who did that. Well, thank you to them for supplying the supplies that we use to pick up the trash and so forth.
Mr. Waddington, your example has been contagious.
Everybody's
We had
following.
bunch of groups going on.
Everybody.
So there were 3 cleanups on Saturday. It was really good.
Yeah. It's great.
Keep it up. If everybody pick up one piece of litter, we'd be a lot cleaner.
Great.
All the residents.
Additional items of new business? If not, then we'll turn to audience participation. Anyone wishing to address any issues pertaining to the city of Sandusky, please step to the microphone, give us your name and address, and share with us your thoughts.
Catherine Carter, 5309 Columbus Avenue. There's been a lot of letters written in the newspaper about how people feel about Jackson Street Pier. Then there's been a lot of people at this podium expressing the same general feelings. Then there's been a few letters, people just want to call people names. But the one thing we're all not, I don't know if we're not realizing it or what, but Jackson Street Pier is already a park. That's why these people are so passionate about it, because for generations they've used it as a park. They use it the same way people at Shoreline Park use that park. We don't have grass and flowers and trees, but neither does the Grand Canyon. And we don't have a big pavilion, but that would be rotted away by now, and no one asked for one. You have businesses that you want your customers to get to your business as easily as possible. It's customer service. And that pier is full of customer service for 7 businesses. They use it at different times of the day. They use it at different lengths of time. But that parking, we've got to keep as much parking on that pier as possible. You have food trucks. You have food across the street. You have food in town. People bring their own food. That pier has been used as a park for years and years and years and years and years. And yes, it's ugly. It's not the prettiest thing. But for 50 years, no one's done anything with it. Now the city's got money to do something, and you're trying to shove a prom dress on something that just wants to be in a sundress and some new jewelry. A lot of the people use that pier as they do, but they don't go down to Shoreline Drive. They want to be on the pier. They want to be in their cars. They want to be near their cars. The parking down there fluctuates, it flows, it doesn't sit stagnant. General Motors has a huge parking lot out there on Perkins Avenue, and they staggered punch-out times so that the parking down there would flow. They changed it one time, it locked up, it froze, it didn't work. They had to go back to the way it was. I know Mr. Pesta probably has a design laying on his table waiting for your signature. But I went back to the 5 Rs that someone wrote in the paper about, and I redesigned my design, and I'd like it if you looked at it. You could chuck it in the wastebasket if you want, whatever. But if you take it and sit on top of Miss Lloyd's building, and you look at that pier, you're looking at a lumpy, cracked piece of blacktop that you were saying is basically very underused. If you look at what's happening on top of that pier, that's the party. They're socializing, they're fishing, they're eating, they're bringing people down. Every time I'm down there, I'm running into somebody from out of the county, every single time. I would just like it if you just look at it from that way, that it's already a park. It just needs to be cleaned up. I came up with a lot of things to do in the wintertime down there, but I keep getting told, they tried that, it didn't work, this didn't work there, so I just kind of cut that back a little bit. But if you would, I have designs, if you would like to look at them, I appreciate it. And that's all I have to say. It's just, everyone down there is passionate about this park because, this pier, because it is a park. They grew up there, they're taking their kids there and their grandkids and their grandparents. It's been generations used like this, and I just see if you look at it that way, it's one of the most used pieces of property in the city, outside of Cedar Point. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. And thank you for preparing something. If you could hand that to Mr. Soloway, then it could get distributed down to the commissioners.
Thank you.
So that we can see what you're proposing.
I think I've got 12. Thank you very much. Oh, and one other thing. I watch you when we're talking to you. You look at us, you act like you're interested. You may be glazed over, but you don't look intimidated. You don't cower when you leave. You don't look like we're bullying you. We just appreciate getting the chance to speak to you about this. Thank you.
I've raised three daughters, so nothing.
There you go.
Sharon Johnson, 1139 Fifth Street. I just have two or three things here. When you mentioned the mural on the State Theater, are they going to be paying for that, or is the taxpayer going to be paying for that mural? Do you know yet?
Funding source offhand.
It's, I can speak to it. Yeah, through the commission president to Mrs. Johnson. The way that it's structured is
Can you speak up, please?
sorry, a third from the State Theater, a third from the Bicentennial Commission's privately raised dollars, and then a third from the marketing pilot program of the city. So our contribution is 1/3 of the total cost.
The city's is 1/3?
I think the report, your report indicated was a $20,000 project?
Yeah, it's like just over $20,000.
Yeah.
So our piece is $7,000 or $8,000, I believe. And that includes a maintenance fund for the mural over time.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Okay, thank you. The brownfields assessments are being done on several areas, and J&J Automotive and Fisher Drug came up. Do we own this property, or what's going on there?
Don't know the answer offhand. Maybe after the meeting, Mr. Lasko could share some details with you, but I don't think we've approved any legislation for that. I don't believe that we own it.
It's in the city manager's report, if you read his report.
I did.
I just wondered why we were doing assessments on somebody else's property if we don't own it.
Well, that's what the EPA fund is for. EPA granted us the money so that we could do inspections of private property, determine whether there were environmental problems, and then take whatever the next step is to either put that back into active use or to get it cleaned up one way or another, and that usually would involve seeking some additional grant funding.
Okay. And the last part here, I'm seeing something very disturbing here, and I'm very concerned about it. Maybe you can straighten this out. But I read where there is going to be a program called the Sandusky Arts and Culture Commission. And somebody's proposing that they take 1% of the admissions tax to go to public art. Why would we do something like that? We just gave you, 2 years ago, we gave you a 1% raise in admission tax. And according to this, you're going to take it back and spend it on art?
I think there's some confusion on the 1%. The 1% is 1% of what is raised, not one of the 4 percentage points.
That's not what this said. What was raised?
No. Through the commission president to Ms. Johnson, in the city's 5-year strategic bicentennial vision, as well as announced at last year's State of the City, we talked about creating a percent for public art program to Commission President Murray's point. And right now, I don't know who presented you with that, but it's still a working document. There's nothing even ready.
It's in the city manager's report here. I'm reading it right out of here.
So the proposal for that is to take a look at 1% of the total, as Dennis said. That would be approximately $30,000 to $40,000 a year. The 1% of the admissions tax that raised it to 4% is about $1.2 million per year. So we're talking about a much more modest portion, and 1% of something is a very common legislative tactic that commissions often do to support art, and there's going to be a lot of debate on this, but again, it was recommended 2 plus years ago in the comprehensive vision, and again, was stated at the State of the City last year publicly, so there's been no lack of transparency as to the potential of creating this program, but there's still an entire process that will determine what and how it would get set up in the future. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Anyone else?
Sherry Geffert, 1707 Mylan Road, owner of Smoking Heifer Barbecue on the Jackson Street Pier. First, I'd like to thank Commissioner Poole for mentioning and praying for Houston. We have family that are evacuating, and so they have been in our thoughts and prayers the last couple days. First, I'd like to say thank you to the commission, the city commissioners, and Mr. Woopser for allowing us to operate on the Jackson Street Pier for the last 2 seasons, as well as to the citizens of Sandusky, because without them, we would not be here. I'm sure you're aware that our business is flourishing and that it is exceeding our expectations, some other people's expectations as well. With that being said, I'm here to ask the commissioners and Mr. Woopser what their plans are regarding Smokin' Heifer. When I spoke with Mr. Volt at the beginning of the seasons, doing my permits and everything I needed to open up in March, we discussed next year, 2018. But after attending meetings and listening to Mr. Pest at the State Theater, it sounds to us like Smoking Heifer is no longer welcome on the Jackson Street Pier, that you're looking for more transient food trucks. Most of y'all know that our purpose has always been, one, to provide quick, fast meals for the businesses downtown, and two, to give the citizens of Sandusky, all the citizens, a reasonably priced meal. And three, to bring more traffic downtown. And we feel like we have done all 3 of those things. So we're asking you, so that we can plan for our next season and let our customers know, is Smoking Heifer welcome back on the Jackson Street Pier next year?
I think it is.
Yeah, I don't have any reason to know that.
I haven't heard anyone say it's not.
Well, when Mr. Pesta was at the State Theater, he said he wanted businesses to be more transient, more from 11 to 1, 5 to 7. We're not a regular food truck that can just pick up and go. Takes a little bit more time for us to set up and move. So we're nearing the end of our season, and we were getting concerned. You know, our customers were asking us, with all the stuff going on with the Jackson Street Pier, I don't know what y'all's intentions are with it. We hope that you listen to the citizens, but will the work start next year? Will we even have a location on the Jackson Street Pier? I mean, these are kind of the questions we need to go forward for planning our next season.
I mean, the commission hasn't voted yet, and there isn't a proposal.
Okay.
And, you know, conversations continue with interested parties, trying to find if there is common ground. It's a, you know, as I've said before, we want to get it right. And that's a process of listening and thinking and stepping back a little bit. I will note that your truck is unusual in that regard, in both its sheer size and the permanent nature of it. That is not the norm in most cities, so
Correct.
mostly those are in and out.
Was not what we had planned on either. We didn't realize what we were getting ourselves into either. So, plus we also listened, when we first opened up our season last year, we listened to the customers. They wanted somebody to stay. No, so we changed our plans, you know, we didn't move. Once we did start moving, we found out, okay, you know, this is kind of rough.
There is no plan at this point, and although, you know, we're trying to find something that works, and as far as I know, you're welcome back there next year.
Okay, thank you. That's all we want to know. We appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Poole.
we're at the point where we have 2 businesses now that, dealing with Jackson Street Pier, have indicated that what's been proposed is not going to work for them or may not. We've obviously raised these folks' concerns about whether or not welcome isn't what it amounts to. It's at some point here, for both the Good Time and these folks, for them to plan how they're gonna feed their families next year. We can't just run this out until the middle of February and say, oh, this is what it is, sorry, it doesn't work. What we do on the pier is and should be driven by what we want done there, what activities are gonna be there. So I encourage and I suggest that we as a commission have an obligation to these 6 very successful businesses to expedite the process and come to a conclusion of, yes, we are willing to do, we all want to improve the pier. No question about that. But what we do to it has an impact on these businesses, and we need to decide whether you're going to support keeping these folks or not, and give them plenty of time to do whatever they can do, whatever's necessary to, for their future business. Just saying, no, we didn't think about or talk about letting you go just leaves them hanging. I'm glad she's very polite and happy about, and it's nice of you to accept that, but the reality is, that was, the answer we gave doesn't give them any information about what to plan for next year. Just wait and see. And I think that's a little bit unfair to all those businesses that are on the pier, the taxpayers that want to fish and sit out there and watch the sun go down. They're not losing their livelihoods. They're losing something that they want to do. So I just encourage that we come to a conclusion about whether or not we're going to support changes that allow these folks to survive.
Are there additional folks present who wish to address the commission on city business? If not, then we will take a 3-minute recess and continue with executive sessions.